All right, cellos, can we hear your A?
Somebody had told me 10 years ago that, somewhere in my future, I'd be sitting in an orchestra playing violin. Nah, wouldn't have believed it. Coming from no background with music, I mean, seriously nothing. It was hard. So I've been with the orchestra, I think going on 6 years now. I stuck it out, and it's still hard. It is really tough, but we put it all together, and next thing you know, we're doing a concert, and it sounds really good.
Welcome to the Why Magazine podcast, bringing you ideas, stories, and voices from Brigham Young University. My name is Whitney Archibald, and today we're going to get to know some of the musicians involved with BYU's New Horizons Orchestra, a string ensemble for adults roughly 40 years and older. No previous experience required.
Ready, and...
We'll talk about what the orchestra is all about, but also why these musicians have decided to pick up new instruments and how it enriches their lives. The orchestra member we met in the intro is Charles Erickson, who joined New Horizons 6 years ago as a violinist. Pam Wiley has been playing cello with the orchestra since it started 20 years ago.
You know, on one hand, I love that I can say that. And on another hand, it's kind of embarrassing because it's been so long. I should be better at it, but I love what we're doing. So it's just a fun activity every week. I've had people say to me, "Oh, that sounds fun. I could never do that because I'm too old." And we're like, no, you can start when you're 80. You can come and learn from scratch. Anybody can come.
Pam Wiley's approach is part of what gives the New Horizons Orchestra its charm. Here's director Allison Taylor.
Some of them come to better their skills, but some of them come because they just need that time, that time for them where they get to do something they love. And that's really, really meaningful. I always thought I would teach in the schools, and there is something really magical about developing that young mind. But these people just love to be here. They love it. And that's really fun to teach people who love it.
BYU's New Horizons Orchestra is part of an international organization with a whole network of bands, orchestras, and choirs. Founded in 1991 by a guy named Roy Ernst. I love his motto, "Your best is good enough." BYU's School of Music started sponsoring its own chapter of New Horizons in 2003 under the direction of Andrew Dabchinsky. That's when Pam Wiley's daughter, who majored in viola performance at BYU, heard about it.
She said, "Mom, you should learn how to play the cello." So I did. I got a little cello and joined the group.
Pam enjoyed New Horizons so much, she just kept coming back. She even went to several music camps sponsored by New Horizons.
You go there and then they kind of divide people up according to their abilities and just spend a whole week outside playing music. That's been so fun. But I don't do that right now because I just feel like I'm a little bit too old to travel that far and just kind of stay here and do this.
Charles Erickson decided to start playing the violin at age 64, kind of on a whim.
I initially got interested because of a little neighbor who was playing at a recital, and I thought, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And being extremely naive about it, I went to the teacher and said, "Hey, is it possible for an old guy to learn this?"
He took lessons for about a year, then his teacher stopped teaching. Then he tried another teacher that didn't work out, and he almost quit. Then he heard about New Horizons.
So I went to one of their practices, just kind of hung out for a while. They sounded really good. I was really surprised. Here's a group of 40 plus players. Some they introduced as new, some were switching instruments. Others had been playing, for quite a while. That conglomeration of people put together a really good sounding orchestra. So I thought, okay, as a beginner, maybe I could fit in somehow.
Beginners who join the orchestra literally start out in a primary room. The group meets in a church building near campus, and the beginners start by learning the basics of their instrument from one of two associate directors or a teacher's aide.
We teach them the open strings, how to hold their instrument, all of those things that in a big group would be hard to teach everyone at the same time. So we're going around and, moving the instrument a little further over their shoulder or, positioning the cello a little higher. And we probably spend a couple of weeks just getting them set up, teaching them how to hold their bow and teaching them how to care for their instrument. You tighten your bow, you loosen your bow, and then we just start from scratch. We teach them the notes. We teach them how to read the notes and the music.
On Charles Erickson's first day in the beginner room, he almost walked right back out again.
A couple of people had been there the semester before. They opened up some music and said, hey, let's just play this and kind of warm up. And, I had the book that they told me to get open to the same song, and away they went. And I just looking at it like, what just happened? I couldn't play the first note. Just couldn't do it. I thought, okay, that's being really naive, thinking that after 1 year of private lessons that I could even start with this orchestra. So I just about walked out. But the instructor came in, and after a couple of hours, I just thought, I'm done. Just still couldn't do anything. But I didn't want to give up on it. I thought it was a real fun group. So I just stuck with it.
After about 6 weeks of teaching the basics, the instructors move on to simple songs.
We play through, like, Mary Had a Little Lamb. We play through Hot Cross Buns, all of those things. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And then we have this piece. It's a simplified version of Bach's Brandenburg Concerto. And they learn that. They spend weeks on it. And then we bring them in with the big group, and they play it with the big group. That's always a magical day because they've heard themselves and they're kind of sorry sound. They don't like it, right? Then they go in and they play with the group and they think, oh, that's really fun.
Here's Pam Wiley.
When we learned how to play that, we thought we were something. And we still play it every concert because it's one of the beginners' favorite songs.
Allie Rushing also ended up in that primary room. As a music education major, she took a class called String Workshop, where students choose a secondary instrument and start fresh. Rushing's main instrument is the viola, and she first started over on the cello. But the orchestra needed bass players, so she graduated to an even larger instrument.
It was very humbling because I also had to help teach beginner bassists. So I would try and help teach her. She would ask me questions and I'm like, this is a really good question. I don't know. Let me go do my homework and next week I'll come back with a firm answer. So it was very humbling and it was awesome learning experience.
More advanced members meet together in the gym with between 40 and 50 players of varying skill levels. Charles Erickson was a bit intimidated when he graduated from the primary room to the gym.
For some of the simple songs, I hit a few whole notes, I think. Don't even know if I would hit anything right. The rest of the time, I just sat there listening to the rest of the orchestra, which was kind of cool.
Allison Taylor is the main conductor of the group, but the associate directors also conduct. And one of the coolest things about the orchestra is that it also serves as a lab, giving BYU music education students hands-on experience directing a large group. That was actually how Allison Taylor got started with the orchestra, first as a student director and then as a TA. And after her stint in the primary room, Allie Rushing became a teacher's assistant for the class and got a chance to conduct as well. Great training for her goal of directing an orchestra in the public school system.
It was kind of cool to go from a player in the orchestra into being the TA and then slowly teaching the beginner class and then to slowly conducting the big orchestra. It was just a little more nerve-wracking because I'm like, they're going to know if I don't know. And that's the great thing about New Horizons is they will give you immediate feedback, which is a really, really good thing. And so, but sometimes it's kind of nerve-wracking to be expecting that feedback in real time in front of everyone. So it was kind of scary that first time, but the more I did it, the more I was really appreciative of what a great learning environment. They're so amazing.
The orchestra meets during both fall and winter semesters, and they perform a few concerts during each semester. In the rehearsal we visited, they were practicing for a joint concert with a local middle school. This might be my favorite detail about the band. I love the idea of mixing these two generations who play at about the same level. Here's Allison Taylor again.
Just seeing the young students and the older students challenged by the same thing, to be able to look at your stand partner and say, yeah, that's really hard. Or to kind of laugh at something that's just giving you a hard time. It's really sweet. It's really fun.
But though they're playing the same songs, it's quite different learning an instrument when you're at an age of just heading up the hill versus when you're over it. For one thing, New Horizons Orchestra members measure success more by how much progress they make than by specific levels of proficiency.
I have to say I'm not very good, but when I first started, I would even get lost in the simplest songs. I didn't understand the music enough. The past year or two, I don't get lost very much. So I think there's some progress there.
This kind of humility and eagerness to learn makes for a very cooperative environment.
Orchestras tend to have auditions, and they tend to have seating placements where you're ranked based on how well you play. Ours is not that way. They sit there because they've been sitting there for 10 years, that's their spot. Usually it's because they can't hear very well, so they'll sit in the front. So there is not that same competition that you'd find in other groups.
This element of camaraderie was very evident when we visited the orchestra.
Yeah, something like that. So, I'm having fun. I hope you are. Your faces are just total concentration.
Well, all you have to do is wave your arm.
You're right. You're right. That's all I have to do. Okay, so violins, would you please, first violins, letter A. Ready and play and 1.
They clearly enjoy being together and have created a vibrant, supportive community. Since orchestra members are all at different stages of learning their instruments, they mentor each other and feel comfortable asking for pointers.
They'll turn around and give each other some advice for fingerings, like, if you try putting a first finger here instead of a third finger, that'll work really well. Or try playing it in this part of your bow. They really are quite friendly to each other. It is wonderful.
And they support each other on a more emotional level, too.
They're really good at keeping track of each other. If someone hasn't come for a few weeks, they have each other's phone numbers so they can reach out and just say, how you doing? And then, of course, if they go through hardship, they're very good at rallying around each other.
We've all been through some hard things in our lives, deaths in our family problems, really serious things, all of us, cancer. And it's just like 2 hours without thinking about a problem that might be going on. It's like you can almost forget whatever is on your mind. For me, I've been through a lot of things, and being there is helpful, and it's therapeutic, really therapeutic for especially maybe older people. I don't know. And I think it's also really good for our brains and our bodies.
Allison Taylor has gotten good at making accommodations.
We have a member who's been with us a long time. She has rheumatoid arthritis. And I mean, if you look at her hands, you say, how do you even play the cello? But she just makes it work. She slides around more than other people would have to slide around. And, not all of our members learn vibrato because they're like, I have a left hand tremor. What are you going to teach me? Right. Or same with the bow, like if the bow shakes. So we're not aiming for perfection in our playing, but we've found a way with everyone. If we say, hey, well, just don't play with vibrato, or your bow won't bounce as much if you play in this part of the bow, right? So just do that. And so we do have to find workarounds. There are perhaps more physical limitations than we've had. That is the reason we rehearse at a chapel and not in the music building with stairs or faraway parking. So there are things we work around, but really, it's been inspiring to see how they meet those challenges and how they continue to do what they love despite those limitations. We want them to have a good experience. We want it to be fun and enjoyable, but we also want to give them skills so that they can enjoy it more, right? Because it is fun to grow and to improve.
Being older and being retired, you kind of need something beyond work that you no longer do. And so that's kind of an enriching thing to have something fun and extra to do that you want to do, and not that you're compelled to do or that you have to do because that's your living. There's kind of a freedom to it all. And, the big life picture, that alone is enriching, just to do something like that.
Yeah.
I could easily have gone, I don't know, learning scuba diving or skydiving. I don't know. But I really don't know what I would have done if I hadn't picked up the violin. So I'm glad that I did.
Thank you for listening to the Y Magazine podcast. You might also enjoy another musical episode, take a tour of BYU's new music building, and our episode called Lifelong Wellness. This episode is based on an article, Strings of Support, by Abi Falin Horspool, which will appear in the winter 2025 issue of Y Magazine. Special thanks to the New Horizons Orchestra for letting us visit, and to Jarrett Davis and Brad Slade for the field recordings. Thanks also to my dad, Glenn Singley, a beginner violinist himself, for playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. This episode was produced by me, Whitney Archibald, with executive producer Brooklyn Hughes Romer and intern Abi Falin Horspool. Original music, mixing, and mastering by Jarrett Davis.